Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the complimentary ICMI webinar, How to Deliver Great Customer Service During Peak Season, sponsored by BoldChat by LogMeIn. I'm Erica Maroy, Community Specialist here at ICMI, and I'll be your moderator today. And before we get going, I just want to take care of a couple of housekeeping items. First, make sure that you disable your pop-up blocker if you currently have it turned on. You'll notice there are several icons at the bottom of the console window, and that first one allows you to see the presentation slides. So you want to make sure that one is maximized. And next, you'll see a Q&A icon. We'll save some time at the end of today's webinar to answer audience questions, and you can participate by submitting your question at any time during the presentation. All you have to do is type your question into that window and click Submit. Now, if you experience any technical problems during our presentation, you can click the question mark icon on the console to access the event help guide. Clicking on other icons you see on the console will give you access to speaker bios, more information about our sponsor BoldChat, as well as some information about upcoming ICMI events, resources, and research. And speaking of upcoming events, we do want to let you know that submissions are now open for our annual Global Contact Center Awards. Be sure to head over to icmi.com/awards for more information. And we've added several new categories this year and simplified the entry process. So be sure to check that out. And if you submit your entry by next Friday, you'll receive 50% off the entry fees. Now, before we go any further, I do want to let you know that our presentation today will be recorded and will be made available for on-demand viewing. You'll receive an email in the next couple of days with instructions for viewing our recorded presentation. And you can also download a PDF version of today's slides directly to this console after the presentation. And as you're watching today, we really encourage you to be social. You can access your Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn accounts all directly through this event console, and we've shared some hashtags and handles on your screen, as you can see. So please keep the conversations going and share what you learn. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our speakers for today. I'm joined by Justin Robbins, who's the Community Services Manager here at ICMI, and I'm also joined by Ross Haskell, who's Senior Director of Products for BoldChat by LogMeIn. As I mentioned earlier, you can learn more about both of our speakers by clicking the speakers icon on your console window. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Justin, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica, and thank you, everybody who's joining us today. So before we get started, I have a confession to make. As we were talking about this idea of peak season and we started talking about providing great service, I had flashbacks to my time in a contact center, and I actually started to get the jitters because I think about this idea of peak season, and at least for me in a number of my contact centers, and when I talk to a lot of contact centers, there's this just sense of mounting anxiety as we think about this thing that we know is coming. It's something that we prepare for every year, but it still manages to get the best of us. It manages to scare us or frighten us or intimidate us, and for a lot of reasons. You know, I spent 5 years working in Hershey, Pennsylvania with their contact center, and we were a highly seasonal contact center. When I say highly seasonal, I mean that from Memorial Day to Labor Day, our contact center got anywhere from 4 to even 6 times the volume that we got the rest of the year. And a lot of my friends during that time of year didn't understand why I would sometimes panic and shout at them for unexplained reasons when they were asking how my day at work was, because really from the outside, when you try to explain what happens at peak season, a lot of people don't necessarily understand what the big deal is all about. And so being the guy from the land of chocolate, I use this analogy, and I really like to think of it as this colorful bowl of candy. And if you were to just look at this colorful bowl of candy without knowing what's inside, everything would look great. Everything would look actually pretty delicious, probably. But what you don't realize until you pick up that first scoop and take a bite is beneath all of those colorful candy shells, someone cruelly put M&M's, Skittles, and Reese's Pieces all in the same bowl. And if you haven't tried it, I don't suggest it. But this reminds me a lot of peak season because from the outside going into, everything looks like it's going to be okay. We've done our planning just as we've planned every other time of the year. We follow our same processes, our same procedures as we do every other time of the year. But something about that period of time when our volume goes to its highest levels is that we start to take that bite, we start to dig into what's actually under the surface, what's beneath that shell, and we realize that that's a scary reality. And the good news is that there's something we can do about it. And the exciting thing is that Ross and I today, as we share some of the things that we've learned and that we've experienced, is that there really is a way to get past that fear, to get past those things that get the best of us during our peak season and get to a point where we truly can provide great customer experiences. And so to get us started, to get a bit of an understanding of what are those things keeping each of you up at night, and maybe your peak season is just weeks away, maybe it's a few months down the road, but I'd love for us to do a poll here quickly. And so on your screen, you'll see a couple options. I would love to know what your top peak season challenge is, and is it maybe you experience long holds and delays during that time? Maybe it's just an inconsistent experience, whether it's across channels or from caller to caller or customer to customer. Maybe it's getting your team to grow in size or shrink going in and out of that season. Perhaps for some of you, it's keeping your employees engaged, excited, morale up, or maybe it's something completely else. Take just a couple of seconds to put in your answer, and then we'll reveal the results here. All right, so let's take a look at what we've got here. And it looks like for the majority of us, almost half the biggest challenge during peak season are those delays. That increase in volume has just overwhelmed our workforce planners. It's gone beyond what we've expected, and so we've got that significant delay, significant hold and response. Looks like next to that is keeping our employees engaged, and an inconsistent customer experience here. They're tied and probably closely related. As someone who was an agent, I remember distinctly being in those times of peak volume during our peak season. And one minute you had that customer who was incredibly excited, but then you had another customer who'd been waiting minutes or hopefully, but possibly even hours to get a response. And as an agent, you get beat up, right? That's tough. And I'm sure for those of you that are on this, you're thinking, I know exactly what's that like. And so for some of us, it's also growing the team up and down, and for a few of us, it's something even else. And so the good news is that based off of these things that you're telling us, understanding those long hold times, that inconsistent experience, keeping morale up, a lot of the things that we're really going to be sharing with you today are going to get at the root and help address some of these very real challenges that we're seeing during our peak season. And so here's the reality, and here's the thing that we have to kind of embrace and accept up front, is that our customers, doesn't matter what time of day, what day of the month, what month of the year they're contacting us, they have the same expectation up front at all times. They have these core set of expectations from us actually in what that experience should be like. And actually one of the biggest ones is that they want us to respect their time. One of the biggest expectations that a customer has when their interactions with us is that we're going to respect their time. In addition, they're also going to expect that we're going to give them someone who's knowledgeable, who's prepared and able to assist them. And the reality is you're probably thinking, well, yeah, that's what they expect, everything else. Yet some reason during our peak season that experience is different. And really to get at the root cause of this, I think we have to take a look at what are the three primary things that upset our customers. Because what I learned during my time in the contact center is that typically the challenge that arises during peak season, it's not a different challenge than what we experience any other time of the year. But what happens is that it's amplified to the point that now we can't go without noticing it. It's to the point that we realize that maybe this was a challenge during the other periods of time. Maybe this is something that we needed to work on, but we get to peak season and it really shows where those big opportunities are for us. So ICMI has done some research over the past year, and we really wanted to understand, we had a general sense of what customers wanted from their experiences. We had a general sense of what their expectations are. But what we wanted to know is what's really upsetting customers today? What's upsetting them during your peak season when they call in? And so that's what we looked at. We looked at customers during the peak season for a majority of organizations, and we wanted to understand what are the things during that time that are upsetting you the most. Because for each one of us on this webinar, delivering great customer service during the peak season, ultimately what that means is getting at the root of each one of these three things that's upsetting our customers. And so the first one of these is that the agent that they're talking to is unable to assist them or resolve their issue. And there are a couple things that can be root causes of this. One of them is common as we go into the peak season. We're so rushed to train, rushed to get people on the phones. And so we think we have a good strategy. We think we say, well, maybe the solution to peak season is we've just got to throw more people at the phones. And the challenge to that is, do we need to increase our staff? Possibly. Possibly we need to increase our staff to accommodate volume, but when we do that hastily, when we decide we just need to get agents on, we've got to train them in as short of time as possible, we've got to get them ready to go, is that often there's gaps in knowledge, often there's gaps in experience, that maybe we're answering the phone quickly, but we're also driving this number one thing that's upsetting customer, and that's interacting with an agent who's unable to assist or resolve their issue. And so one of the things that I begin to question is, okay, so maybe we have to change our staffing models a little bit in the peak season, but what if there is a way to make our agents more efficient? What if there's a way to take the agents that we already have on the phone that are already trained, already capable, and what if there's a way that we could find a way of empowering them to handle more contacts? Perhaps maybe that's something that would get them to that knowledgeable, to that skilled agent, but then also help us on that back end of driving high volume. Speaking of high volume, it's probably not a surprise to you that in that top three list of things that upset customers the most, that long hold or that delay in response is one of the top three things. In fact, research by Forrester found that the number one things that customers are looking for out of their experiences for organizations who respect their time. And so one of the challenges with this, and I think back to my own experience and my own organizations, and I look to the organizations that I work with even today, is often this results in we're just not supporting enough or the right channels. We're funneling all of our customers into one source of contact, one point, and the result is they bunch up. Right? This is already kind of those dynamics of being in inbound contact centers that contacts have this tendency to bunch up, but they bunch up even more when we have just a funneled, a narrow place for them to contact us. And so perhaps one of the ways to mitigate this is to disperse where those contacts are coming in and to offer a variety of channels for those customers. So I mentioned that I worked for Hershey for 5 years, and one of the challenges that we had during that peak season of Memorial Day to Labor Day is that volume went significantly up during that time. Significantly, as I said, 4 to 6 times as much. And what we found when I first started there is that they just inundated the 1 or 2 channels that we were offering them, and so phone was just annihilated. And I can remember one day where we thought we had staffed correctly, we thought we had done everything right, but then we still had calls that were on hold 45, 50 minutes, and we're thinking that this isn't sustainable, this isn't something that we can handle long term. And one of the things that we realized there after talking to our customers and looking at the channel options that we had available, we needed to open up another path. We needed to take some of those contacts and give customers another alternative. And so maybe for some of you, that's self-service, and it's evaluating your self-service options and understanding what are some of these things that our customers are contacting us about that we can move them to that channel. Maybe for others of you, you're thinking, you know what, we have a lot of calls that are coming in. We get a lot of things that are on email. We notice that customers are often on our website, and they're not finding what they want on our website, and so then they're calling us or they're emailing us. And so maybe you're thinking, what if we had a channel that we could interact with the customer right where they were at that moment that they were there and help them when and where they needed it. And so maybe for some of you, you're thinking maybe chat. That maybe that's the solution that gets to the root of primarily our customers are already on our website or they're already in our app, and so how can we engage them where they're at? And so the third challenge here is that they're given the wrong answer. The third thing that upsets them the most is that, look, maybe the person can't help me. I can kind of deal with that. Maybe I've waited a long time, but the thing that really kind of is the last straw here is when you finally reach that person and you get to who you think can help you, and they give you inaccurate information. And there are a lot of things, again, that can be contributing to this. And maybe it's just, rushed training. Maybe it's a knowledge base or a tool that's not as effective at providing the agent the answer. But what we need to find is, how can we make sure that our agents are trained in what those tools are and have the answer, or have guidance on what the answer should be. And so thinking about these three things, they probably shouldn't be surprises to us. At least I hope they're not surprises to us. But the thing that we need to embrace is the reality that we have to accept here is they're not surprises to us, and yet they continue to be challenges for us day after day, month after month, peak season after peak season. And so we really need to figure out what we can do about that. I am curious to hear from all of you. So out of those things, out of the complaints that you hear from your customers, I'd love to do another poll. And what I'd love to know is, when you get complaints during your peak season, what's the number one thing that your customers are upset about? Is it that agent unable to assist them? Is it the long holder delay? Is it that they're given the wrong answer, or something else? Go ahead and take just a few minutes to put your responses in there. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got. So here again, we see it's that long holder delay. The number one thing that customers are complaining about is that long holder delay, but very closely behind that is that agent who's unable to assist or resolve their issue. And so we really start to get to this compounded place where the customers are waiting a long time, so they're upset probably because of that, since we said that was our number one challenge in general that we're experiencing. So no surprise that that's what's upsetting the customers. But then that next piece is they get to someone who's unable to assist or resolve their issue for them. And so the question that I really have to ask everyone here is, if we know this, if we know the number one challenge that we face, and we know the number one thing that upsets our customers, if we know that, then why is that still the number one thing that upsets our customers? And that's what I'd really love to dive into today. That's what I really like to explore, that the time that we have left. And kind of the sad and scary truth to that is that for about half of us, the main reason that the number one thing that upsets our customers is still the number one thing that upsets our customers is because we have to do a better job of using customer feedback to drive improvement. ICMI's research recently asked the question, and we just wanted to know the customer feedback that you're getting, the insights you're receiving on those customer challenges. Are you using that to improve how you're escalating things? Are you using that to refine your processes, your procedures? And just more than half are doing that today. But there's opportunity for the fact that the other half of us, we're either collecting it, but we're thinking we need a better way to do something about this. We need a better way to do something about this, or we're not collecting it at all. And so I kind of put my thinking cap on, and I said, okay, so we understand kind of what the top three challenges going into peak season are, and we even know what the top three complaints that we're hearing from customers are. But what I want to understand is, what do customers really want from all of that? What are our customers asking for? Because sometimes they complain, and sometimes what they complain about isn't what they really want, and sometimes they tell us that they want something, and they really want something else. And so ICMI did some research this year, and we actually did two studies, one that we did with a number of contact center leaders, and also one that we looked at with Harris Interactive. And we really wanted to understand, what are customers asking for from their service interactions, and what are, as we as contact center leaders, what's the opportunity for us? Because going into peak season, it's about understanding what's that top challenge to the customer, but what do they really want, and what can we really do about it? And so the first thing that I realized is that for many of our customers, when they're coming into us at peak season, what they want us to focus on is providing great service to them, not trying to sell them on something. And you're probably thinking, wait, Justin, I don't know about that, because our peak season maybe is based all around this idea of selling. Our customers are coming to us because they want to buy something from us. But the reality of that is that when we asked consumers what they were getting out of their experience with our contact centers during their peak season, they said that, honestly, we feel that the company is just kind of so rushed. We can get that sense that the agent is just trying to get the sale, just trying to get us off the phone. But really we feel that they're focusing more on that we as contact center leaders are focusing more on selling the customer than providing excellent customer service. And no wonder our top peak season challenge is that volume's too high. We're in that kind of putting out the fire mode where we've just got to get the agents, they've just got to take care of those contacts, they've just got to work through, we've just got to get the volume down, and then so it's easier for us to focus on let's just quick fix the need and move on to the next contact. And what our customers are saying from us is that really what they want is us to focus on providing great service. And our research supports that when we focus on providing a great service, not only does it affect and drive greater customer loyalty, but it also can improve what you might see from a conversion rate. It also can improve what you might see from customers on what their average spend is. And so what's important for us is to also align the way that we're providing service. It's not just about the approach of the agent, but it's the channels that we offer, and are we really moving forward with a service mindset? Are we really saying that the channels that we offer, the experience that we offer, it's based around you, Mr. and Ms. Customer. It's based around the experience that you want. It's based around the service that you need. Because in order for us to really do that, we've got to get a good grasp of what it means to provide a great experience across all of our channels. It requires us really understanding what customers want from the channel mix. Kind of going hand in hand with that of customers wanting us to not just sell to them is they really want a consistent experience. And I kind of encourage all of us to take a step back and put ourselves in our consumer shoes, put ourselves in the mind of ourselves as consumers, and I think we can agree that this is a universal truth. I want to know that when I contact a company, it doesn't matter what channel I use, it doesn't matter who I contact, whether it's the same agent every time, a different agent every time, and 6 different channels that I use. What I want is the experience to be the same across every single touch point. I want to know what I can expect from you as an organization. And then the terrifying fact is that us as contact center leaders, just about a quarter of us believe that we do that today. We believe that we provide that consistent experience across our touch points. And again, there's a lot of things that can be contributing to this. And maybe we have a siloed approach and some channels aren't being handled by the contact center. Maybe we don't have all of the agents trained on the different types of channels that we're offering. And so when we add different systems and we add different agents and we add different training, it's every single time we add a variable there, the integrity of that experience can degrade. But what's important for us is to look at that customer experience end to end, to look across those touch points and make sure that we really can provide that consistent experience. And the great part is that as we look at customer preferences, as we look at what they need, they're telling us what they want, they're telling us what they need, and the good news is that there's great opportunity for us to truly provide great experiences. There's great opportunity for us to really provide consistency when it comes to our customers. But the other thing to know about that is it's not just about answering the phone quickly. It's not just about being consistent. It's not just about focusing on providing great customer service. Part of providing great service during our peak season is being where our customers want us to be. It's being in their channel of choice, and it might not be what you think it is. So ICMI's research earlier this summer, we asked contact centers what the channels that they're supporting are and what percentage they support of contacts in each channel. And then we also asked them what channels that they think customers want. And the number one channel that we were hearing from contact centers that they were supporting, and the number one channel that they thought customers wanted, was inbound phone. But the results of our survey was that a majority of customers, in fact 53%, when they're contacting a company for the first time, they would prefer to use online chat before calling the company on the phone. And I think about myself as a consumer, and I'm like, Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why this is true. There's a lot of advantages to using chat. And when I start to think about peak seasons and I look at the peak seasons that I experienced, I'm thinking, my goal here, what is my goal? My goal here is to provide a great customer experience. My goal is for it to be consistent. My goal is to get combating at this volume that right now is just killing me. And looking at that, a lot of those times when I was in those situations, I was offering traditional channels and the light bulb hadn't come on about chat. And so in my contact centers then that went into peak season and we brought chat on, what we found is this was our opportunity to thrive. We found in a lot of ways that when we added this to the mix, it alleviated so many of the challenges that we experienced in our peak season, but also provided a lot of opportunities that I'm excited for Ross to share and Ross to talk about today as well. And so the reality is that peak season is coming, whether we want it to or not. The busiest time of year is coming up, and so that can be an opportunity for us. It can be an opportunity for us to fight the same battles that we fight every single peak season and to kind of go through that definition of chaos of, going in, doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result every season, or maybe this peak season we can try something different, we can do something different, and instead of struggling to survive this peak season, maybe we can actually find a way to truly thrive as we go into that highest period of volume in our contact center. And ultimately that choice is up to yours on what you want to do when it comes into that. And so I'm really excited to introduce Ross and can't wait for him to share just some more insight of how do we really make the most, how do we get a hold of the chaos that's coming into our contact centers during peak season. So Ross, I hand it over to you.
Thanks very much, Justin. Good information there, and I think you laid out the groundwork really nicely for the challenges that I think everyone who's got any kind of seasonality in their business is already facing. So I'm excited to share some strategies and some tips for some ways to handle this, some things that can be done. I've got some kind of philosophical things around them, but then some real practical implementation-oriented types of advice. So what we're going to talk about, sort of organizing the chaotic picture that Justin laid out, is really under two kind of categories. The first is using a multi-channel strategy in order to handle the high volume. And I'll talk a little bit about channel popularity, preference. I'm going to share some research here that we've done with consumers. And then the next sort of category is providing effective real-time engagement with chat. So I'll take a deep dive into one of the channels and talk about what you can do to make it successful and how you can distribute workloads around the peak season. So the first thing to talk about is multi-channel. When a lot of people think of multi-channel, they think of it as, that carnival game, whack-a-mole, oh, here's an email, bam, here's a chat, wham. It doesn't have to be like that. It really can actually be much more strategic. Some research shows maybe why people think of it as that chaotic whack-a-mole game, and what we find is that people really do use a wide variety of channels. So what you're looking at here is just a piece of research we did with consumers, and we simply asked, what methods have you used in order to contact a company for sales or support reasons? And as you can see, all the channels are in some kind of use. I think maybe surprising to some people is how high email is. We hear lots of people say, oh, email's going away, email's dying or whatever. And year after year for the past decade, our research has shown that that's just not true. Email is around. It's very, very widely utilized. And I think you have to pay attention to it. Phone, obviously very high. In this particular research, we split a phone call from a mobile versus phone call from home or from a landline. And interesting there, if you add those up, obviously phone is still a big category, but you can see that more and more calls are coming from a mobile devices. We'll talk later about what all that means, because mobile is somewhat different, and it should be treated differently maybe in your contact centers. Other channels of interest, social media clearly used, not real frequently, but certainly a very public channel. Video chat, new, kind of nascent. 10% of the consumer population we surveyed has used it before to contact a company. So I guess based on some things I'm seeing out there in the market, that's probably going up. Not exponential growth, but it's certainly finding a place of its own. So anyway, the story here is as many people think, which is, look, all these channels are in use, and many people view it as chaotic, sort of, just trying to do our best juggling all these channels. Other people ask, okay, well, if consumers were given the choice, which channel would they pick? So they may have used all these channels, but which one would they pick? And actually, I turned this into a poll question. So if you take a moment to give what you think is the answer. So if consumers are asked which channel they prefer, which channel wins? So is it a phone call from landline, phone call from mobile, email, live chat, or social media? Give you just a second there to look at that. And then we'll share. Okay. Should be able to vote on that now. Erica, can you make sure that I've successfully pushed that poll out to the audience? Okay, great. So, you guys think that it's, phone call from mobile, followed by email, pretty high, live chat, and social, nobody. Okay, so we asked this question to consumers, and here's the answers that they gave us. So as you can see, if you add up phone, that does win, but it's pretty much bifurcated between a landline and a mobile phone. Email, again, very high, the third one. Live chat is about 15% or so. And you see the other ones are smaller, but definitely there. So, the big three, if you think about it, are phone, email, and chat. Those are the kind of, 1, 2, and 3 as far as channel preference. We asked this question in a different way, which is like, okay, so that's the channel you prefer, but how about the channel that works best? So we presented 17 different scenarios, and you can see them there. They're things like to update account information or to seek technical support about a laptop or about a mobile device or whatever. We presented these 17, and we said, which channel of the channels we've talked about would be best to accomplish this task? And we defined best as would solve the problem as quickly as possible. And so what we found was pretty interesting. We found that the three choices, the top three for all of them, were phone, email, and live chat, with three exceptions. And that was that email was the number one choice for three of these scenarios. And those three are these. So it's interesting to think about that, because if you are trying to figure out how to manage lots of inbound volume during peak season, there are potentially certain problem areas where one channel might be better than another. And by kind of moving customers or suggesting to customers or making more available that channel under those scenarios, you can kind of shape the volume that comes in on a per channel basis. So this is a different way to start thinking about multi-channel rather than the whack-a-mole game, but thinking as the fact that you can utilize different channels in different situations in order to handle volume. We learned something else interesting, which was even though video chat was a very small percentage of people who'd used it, we learned that if you'd for those that had actually had a video chat, they named video chat for number 3 and number 1 for 2 of those scenarios, which were here, which had to do with taking a demonstration of a product or seeking technical support for a computing device. And so they thought that channel might be more effective there. The other thing we learned is this sort of mobility factor. So frequent mobile users, people that say, hey, I use my mobile device multiple times throughout the day, which, by the way, was a very high percentage of the entire population, they displayed the most different responses of all when asked about the most effective channel. They said that email was number one for 9 of the scenarios, video chat for 1 scenario, and home phone was never number 1. It was always mobile phone. So not terribly surprising, but what this tells you also is that, hey, the mobility of your customers changes channel preference under certain scenarios. So again, why is this helpful? This is helpful because remember when we talked about the fact that people think multi-channel is like whack-a-mole, right? Rather than that, think about multi-channel as a toolbox, right? You can utilize different channels under different scenarios in order to move volume from one place or another. And by the way, you're doing that in a way that is very friendly to consumers because you know, and by the way, some of these scenarios may be different for your business. You may find email does not work in one scenario but does in another. And so, yes, I encourage you to sort of learn about the channels that work in your certain scenarios for your business. But once you do that, you then can make those channels more available or more visible and provide a better customer experience and achieve operational efficiencies at the same time. And that's obviously what everybody wants, right? That's win-win for customers and for your organization as well. Okay, so that was sort of the first category of kind of practical things that you could do around multi-channel. So just to summarize, drive customers to the channel you want them in. You can do that based on cost, their preference, what you know about the situation for which it's most effective, and obviously mobility is a factor that changes some of those things. I would tell you I think the most important factor there is the effectiveness one. So if you know a channel is more effective at solving a problem under certain scenarios, then you want to push customers to that channel if you know that you're going to solve their problem. And by the way, even if that channel is the most expensive one, that's okay. That's certainly going to be true. There are just some situations under which you're going to want to push the customer to that channel because you know you're going to have a better chance to solve their issue. Okay, and I think Justin shared some of that data that not solving the customer's problem is a very frustrating thing for them. So here are some best practices associated with kind of multi-channel strategy during the peak season. So let's talk about 3 of them in particular. Email. So auto-route emails to the right place using subject line rules. So a lot of email routing engines will allow you to do this. And so if you know certain scenarios are better to handle with certain types of agent skills, for example, you can use subject line routing to get them to the right place. Create and use canned messages for the most commonly asked questions. Canned messages should be integrated into whatever system you're using, not a Word document that you cut and paste from. That's not efficient for the agent. Give chat agents emails to work on. They'll be more efficient overall. So read that one again carefully. Give chat agents, yes, chat agents, give them emails to work on in between chats. It's very easy for a chat agent to leave an email, go work on a chat, go back to the email. We know this. We've timed it. We've video recorded it and timed it, and we know that agents that do this end up with more work throughput than agents that don't. And they're also happier because there's really no downtime in their day. They are not waiting. They don't get frustrated. They always have something to do. And by combining a real-time channel like chat with an asynchronous channel like email, you gain a lot of operational efficiencies in your contact centers. Some best practices around mobile chat. Answer them first. We know that mobile customers have a greater sense of urgency. Don't type as much. The mobile form factor can't handle big, giant blocks of text. And do not resist the temptation to escalate out of the mobile channel. People have contacted you through mobile chat because they want the problem solved that way. Don't say, oh, can I call you? Or just stay in the mobile chat and fix the problem. Social. Set up searches to weed through the junk. There's lots of junk, and you need to have some really intelligent searching so that you can give agents good, proper things to work on. You need to trust agents in a team environment to handle social. This involves a lot of training. It involves using some canned messaging, which is my 3rd bullet there. But ultimately, to handle the volume of things that come in through social channels, you have to empower and trust your agents. Look, you can spot check, you can do reporting and all kinds of things, but in order to really handle it and to handle it efficiently and in a satisfactory way, especially from a timing standpoint, you just need to trust and put in good training practices with your agents. All right. I've got another poll question here coming up, and Eric, I'll ask for your help again to push it out to the audience. We're going to talk now about effective chat engagement. And so we asked consumers, what determines a chat session success? So what was the number one answer here? Ease of finding the chat button, how quickly the chat was answered, or the overall time it took for the chat from beginning to end, or is it none of the above? Give you just a couple of seconds to answer that one. And when we have enough, you can just let us see. Okay, so it looks like speed. Everyone guessed on speed. The answer is actually none of the above. I'm sorry, it was a trick question. For a decade of research, we here at LogMeIn have learned and asked this question over and over again, hoping it would be some technology reason so that we could act and make our product better, but it never is, and it never has been for literally 10 years of research. It's always this answer, and it's always this answer far and away, the winner. It has nothing to do with any of those factors. It's the product and service knowledge of the agent. It's how well trained they are in the product and service that they represent. Now, are the tools that you pick, can they impact how good the agent is, what access they have to, frequently asked questions with? Yes, that's true, but really it's the quality of the agent. I think this is important because we're often asked by people new to chat, oh, so I should put my new people on chat, right? That should be my training ground. And the answer to that is no, do not do that. You will create a frustrating experience for chatters. You need good, experienced agents to be working on your chat channel. So a piece of advice around chat is to use proactive chat. And so, why? Why are we offering this advice? Well, the numbers don't lie. It just works. So here's some benchmarking data across basically our entire customer base to give you some indication of how proactive could impact your business. So on average, 6.6% of website visitors will accept a proactive invitation. If that website visitor is a mobile visitor using a mobile device, it's higher at 7.3%, which many people find counterintuitive, but that's what the numbers say. For real optimizers, so we have a group of customers, not just a handful, but a pretty decent sized number of customers who really treat proactive like a science. And they're really trying to maximize the number of proactive engagements that they get, the number of chat engagements that they get. And when you do that, when you try really hard at it and you are constantly vigilant around it, you can get anywhere between 12 and 34% engagement rates through proactive, which is quite impressive. We know that in general, adding proactive on top of your regular chat deployment will take up your engagement rate by about 4 times. So you have 4 times as many engagements as you do through reactive. So you may be asking yourself, yeah, but proactive chat, that's when that thing pops up, right? And that's annoying to my website visitors. I don't want to do that. Well, we actually asked folks, and in this particular research, we asked mobile consumers. We said, hey, when something pops up on your mobile phone asking you into a chat engagement, what's your reaction to that? And we asked them to rate that reaction on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is it's really annoying, and 5 is I'm happy to know that help is available. So we consider 3s, which are just neutral. 4s and 5s are clearly positive, so that the sum of those are sort of receptive to being invited. And as you can see, it's the majority. It's 2/3 of the mobile visit population. So I don't think that people should be afraid of proactive chat. Don't be afraid of it. Do treat it like a discipline. You absolutely do have to think it through and make sure that you're not doing it incorrectly, because it is possible to do proactive wrong, and that can be annoying, certainly. But if you do it right, generally people are welcoming of it and has very, very good, solid business results. So let me give you some best practices handling chat volume. And after this, we'll move into the Q&A section of our program, and we want us to leave about 10 minutes for questions, and that's what we've done. Make sure you type in your question using the Q&A tool, and Justin and I will answer as many of them as we can before before time expires. But before we get there, some chat best practices for handling peak volume. So proactive chat, I recommended using that, and the reason, not just because it has very positive business results, is because it's rule-based. And because it is rule-based, when you have spikes in volume, this allows you to target only the most desirable conversations. So you're doing this based on behaviors your visitors have on the website. And so as more and more and more volume comes, you can get more and more and more targeted. And so because of that, you are able to kind of handle volume on an ongoing basis. I recommend that you use a least busy distribution algorithm in high volume settings. This reduces customer wait time the most. So the way that you distribute chats, you can do it in lots of different ways. You can do it in a round-robin fashion, and lots of companies do that. That's basically like dealing cards at a table, right? A chat comes in, I deal it to the next agent, and the next one, and so on. And this is, I think, very good in a sales setting because most agents find that to be the quote-unquote fairest way. However, in real high volume settings where lots of agents are often busy, this can increase wait times. Using a least busy mechanism finds the agent who is the least busy and delivers the chat to them right away. So, and it's just seconds, really. It can just be seconds, but those seconds matter because we know after 10 seconds of someone waiting, the drop-off rate is pretty steep. So answering chats within 10 seconds after the visitor has requested one is a best practice. I don't know if I listed that or not, but at least busy distribution allows you to do that in really high volume settings. So throttle, ideally automatically, both your reactive and proactive chat operations based on current staffing. So I think most sort of enterprise size chat systems allow you at least manually to kind of go in and change settings associated with how many people are currently logged in and ready to take chats, and some allow you to do it in an automated fashion. So you don't want to be sending a lot of proactive invitations out onto your website if your agents are filling up with chats really fast, because then they could accept the proactive invitation and have a bad experience when, oh, nobody's there to actually answer it. That's not good. So you'll either have to manually or in an automated fashion be throttling your proactive deployment and your reactive deployment based on how many people do I have. And this is especially true in peak season during shift changes. So end of one shift, beginning of another, you can have this kind of thing happen, and that's why keeping an eye on it, either a supervisor doing it manually, kind of looking at the queue, or doing it in an automated fashion is very helpful. So always be testing, always be measuring, always be optimizing. Chat, and especially proactive chat, is not a set it and forget it activity. Web behavior changes, web design, user experiences change, and because of those things, you always need to be thinking about and tweaking your chat implementation, and a lot of that has to do with running lots of reporting around the numbers to make sure you're gaining all the efficiencies that you can from your chat deployment. And I guess the last thing I would say is that one of the trends out there now is the kind of increasing usage of self-help, and keeping that separate from other channels was the way that it used to be done, and it's still, I think, very common now to have sort of this standalone area of your website called frequently asked questions, right, or a forum or answers or whatever. But more and more we're seeing that integrating those answers into other channels. So while you're waiting, right, for a chat to begin, why not search frequently asked questions, or before the chat begins, kind of automatically serving some content, or integrating it into an email autoresponder. Hey, we like to respond within 2 hours, but in the meantime, here's some potential answers based on the subject line that you've given us. So there's integrating the self-help into the chat or other channel experiences, I think, is kind of a trend that we're seeing these days that looks to be very promising. Okay, so I hope that those were some kind of practical ways to think about managing peak volume. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Erica to get us through our Q&A portion.
Awesome. Thank you, Ross, and thank you, Justin. So as Ross said, we did promise to save a few minutes at the end to take your live questions. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But just want to let you guys know that if we do run out of time or you guys think of questions after the presentation, please feel free to reach out to us afterwards, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that are left over offline. So with that, we'll go ahead and get going. And first off, Ross, we have an attendee who had a question about the research that you shared on channel preference, and he was wondering if that was just U.S.-based or if European respondents were included as well.
Excellent question, and I apologize for not being clear there. This was consumers in the United States and the UK. So I wouldn't say that it was a wide swath of Europe, clearly, but we did do US and UK in that research, and both were statistically valid sample sizes.
Excellent. Thanks for clarifying there. Several more questions coming in. Here's a good one. So some companies don't have the chat option available all day long. Do you have any advice to share on what peak hours are the best to offer chat?
Yes. So we have a couple of pieces of research available, and they're out on our website where we offer some advice in this way based on survey data, again, with consumers. But I'll give you the kind of 10,000-foot view now. So here's what we know. We know that the number one customer preference for chat availability is 24/7, but of course that's their preference, right? They want it whenever they want it. However, we know that you don't actually have to do that. I mean, that is obviously the thing that would please consumers the most. But if you choose not to do that or can't do that for operational reasons, and many can't, here's what we know that you should do. You should offer at least a couple of hours beyond normal close of business. Not doing that it would dissatisfy a pretty significant number of consumers. I can't remember the exact data. We also know you have to have some weekend hours. You don't need to be there all day long, but some weekend hours. Chat is one of those channels that certainly people use it during work hours, but they also use it sort of at the tail end of work hours or when they first get home. And they also tend to use it on the weekend as well when they're sitting on the couch with their iPad or whatever. So if you're not going to do 24/7, have some beyond business hours by a couple hours or whatever you can do, and then have some weekend hours as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ross. And thank all you guys for the great questions. I continue to see lots of good ones coming in, so we'll just keep moving along. Would love to hear from both of you what your thoughts are on blending a social media team with a live chat and email team. And from your experience, can live chat or email associates support social and vice versa?
Well, I'll start on that one. So as far as blending the team, it's a great idea. So the three channels that were mentioned, live chat, social, and email, all have different synchronicities, I guess is the way you say it. So live chat's the most real time, right? Email is the least real time, and social is somewhere in between. And so what we know is if you're going to make a text-based agent efficient, you want to mix the real-time nature of the channels. So a way to make an agent very inefficient would be to give them live chat and phone, because they're both extremely real time, and it's very hard for them to choose which one to do first, and they can't do them both well at the same time. But by combining social, where we think the proper response time is within an hour, email, where we think it's probably within an hour or two, and chat, where it's as real time as you possibly can be by still delivering a quality response, you are providing the agent with a great amount of flexibility during an 8-hour day or a 7-hour day to do all of those things well. And so now that assumes, of course, that that you manage the amount of concurrent items you give them. You can't give them 100 tweets to deal with. That's too many. But assuming you do that, then you can achieve very, very good efficiency in your contact center by giving text-based agents more text-based work to do.
Awesome. That's great advice, Ross.
Yeah, so to build on that, first, Ross makes a really great point about blending chat and phone. I mean, and that is a recipe to fail. I've seen lots of contact centers want to do it and try to find a way to route the work, and it always kind of backfires on them. You know, kind of the key thing that I would want to point out here is you need to ask the question of, are you doing it for efficiency's sake, or are you doing it because it also makes sense? What I mean by that is sometimes some of these different channels are serving very different purposes. Social in particular, our research is showing us that by and large customers are not going to social for customer service. By and large, social customers are going to social to either promote a brand or to complain or be a detractor of a brand, which can often be a much different skill set than somebody who's just providing customer service. And even for some organizations, I see that social has become as part of their escalation team because they've realized that a majority of their contacts on social are people who are detracting their brand. Granted, that's going to be a different situation for everyone, and so your brand might find that customers are using social for customer service, and the nature of the contacts are kind of congruent to what somebody handling chat or email would be doing. So really, you've got to ask yourself two questions. And one, from an efficiency standpoint, does it make sense? As Ross mentioned, absolutely. These written channels, you can blend it nicely, but you also have to be aware from a content and context standpoint, does it actually make sense for that person to be handling those contacts? Because, you know, in certain situations, it makes sense to break up the work, and this might be one of those.
Awesome. Great points, Justin. So thanks for chiming in there. Gosh, so many good questions coming in, but I like this one because as a customer myself, I can identify because I'm guilty of this. Would love to know if you guys have any advice for strategizing around the fact that most customers don't pay attention to push channel options. They're going to push whatever button they need to, and they know what button to push just to talk to a live agent, and that can eliminate some of the effectiveness of the other channels. So do you guys have any advice for dealing with that challenge?
Well, we have some customers who are, I guess, a little bit more brutal around this. So they've done good research, and they know, for example, that for a password reset, that talking to a live agent is a underwater experience financially for them, right? So the customer gets the password reset. They're happy, but the time spent doing that with the agent is a negative balance sheet opportunity for the customer. So they don't want to do that. So they make it actually harder to get to chat for those types of scenarios, and they make it easier, for example, to send an email. So, and when I say easier, they don't show a chat button, right? So you'd actually have to go somewhere else on the website and get into a chat agent through some other mechanism in order to ask that question. But in the area where all the stuff about passwords is and so forth and so on, and my account login, there is a very nice, good presentation of, you know, instant password reset access. They have good messaging, good strong messaging over that, and they have an email form. And at the back end, it's not a person; it's just an automated system that does a reset. But so they I guess they sort of. It's not nefarious behavior. They know this is the most efficient way for their customers, and they've actually timed it. It actually takes less time, right, than actually talking to someone through chat. So I guess you could be more brutal about it in that way. There's one other example, and then I'll let Justin add his commentary. But in one of the advantages, as I said, of sort of integrating self-help into other channels. So, for example, integrating self-help into a chat channel. You can have some control over that, right? So you could say, look, I'm going to, before I allow someone into chat, I'm going to make them go through this self-help, but only on this particular part of my website and not other parts of my website. So because you have that type of control, depending on the tools that you're using, you can actually, you build walls, but they're not apparent, right? They're not apparent to your customer, so you're not delivering a bad experience, but you're simply managing the channel that they're using in a fairly strict way, but to the user it still seems seamless.
Yep, great question. Justin, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so two things that I'll put on here. First, saying that most customers do not pay attention, you're gonna find one of two things are gonna be true. Either if it is in fact most of your customers that are zeroing out, that tells me probably right out the gate that you have a bad IVR. Kind of just being transparent there. If most of your customers have realized that they need to press 0, then your IVR is not working, because if your IVR was set up correctly, you wouldn't have that issue. That being said, you still may find that a subset of your customers are doing that. They're going through the path of least resistance. Run trending data on that. Most likely you're going to find out that it's a subset of customers. It's a certain contact type or a certain demographic of customer. And then you need to get at the root cause of what's really, what's driving them to do that. Is because that particular IVR path is bad? Is it because maybe there's a greater sense of urgency with their need? There can be a lot of root cause there, and happy to have a deeper conversation with anyone, particularly about IVR effectiveness. But that's usually what it says to me. There's a deeper issue than just most customers are pressing 0. Something's causing them to do that. And to strategize, we have to get to the root of what is that thing that's causing them to zero out.
Absolutely. All right. Well, once again, I just want to thank you, Justin and Ross, for all of the excellent insight that you guys have shared today. Fortunately, we've come to the end of our hour. So as I mentioned, if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us afterwards, and we'll be reaching back out to answer any questions that were left in the queue today. But just a couple of quick announcements before we go. First off, I just pushed out a link to a really brief 6-question survey. If you don't mind just taking a moment to fill that out, we would greatly appreciate that, as it will help us to better tailor future presentations. Another reminder, you can download a PDF version of the slides directly through the console, and do expect to receive an email in the next couple of days with instructions for viewing the recorded presentation. I do need to mention that this presentation is copyright 2015 by ICMI. The presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by ICMI, which is solely responsible for its content, and BoldChat is responsible for their content and opinions. On behalf of ICMI, our speakers, and our sponsor, BoldChat, we thank you for attending today. Have a great afternoon.